direct action. And not all schools are making the same choice as Harvard.
Mike Lee, your reaction?
Yeah, Maria, it's even worse than that. You have a company with a $55 billion endowment that's, educating the children of the leaders of the Communist Party of China, getting billions of dollars of federal tax money, or $600 or $700 million on an annual basis. Why are we giving them a dime, especially with all the laws they've broken? You have members of the faculty arrested for espionage. Okay, it's beyond ridiculous, and I'm glad somebody's finally doing something about it.
Yeah, the only issue here that we're going to probe, we've got a very important segment coming up tomorrow on this. We're going to take a look at the money being stripped out of Harvard and some of these other Ivy Leagues. Is it impacting the money that is being allocated to medical research? Is SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, Mike? So, all right, you're an American man, okay? Why can't they just speak to American men the way they speak to American women and be honest? How about just some honesty about what's going on in this country and how their policies have failed the American people, Mike?
Because they hate men. They especially hate young white men, right? And like, you can see this in the data. So women surpassed men as college graduates in like 1980, and in the most recent data from 2022, it's 60-40. Okay, there is an all-out assault that, like, we need to blame men, and obviously over the course of this country, there's been some bad things that have happened to women, but they keep riding that. They keep assaulting men, tearing them down in every single way, shape, or form, and it's having real knock-on effects. And if you're a young man, what are your prospects on life? Okay, never ever has it been so difficult to get ahead. The suicide rate for working class men in America is higher now than at any point in the it's like including the Great Depression. Okay, and so I can save them $20 million right away. Like, you need to adopt Donald Trump's policies. Okay.
How about actually doing something that really helps the American people and stop being obsessed with your grip on power? All right, we got to take a very difficult to deal with, suggesting a 50% straight tariff on the block. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Americans can expect several large trade deals in the next few weeks. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, we hold all the cards, right? If you look at Germany, exports are over a third of their economy. In the U.S., when you take out Boeing and defense, okay, you're looking at 5 or 6% of our GDP for our exports, okay? And not only that, like, we buy so much more from all these other countries. We're so much more important. It's our consumer that's driving the world economy. Right. We hold all the cards in every single one of these negotiations. So as you and I said roughly 6 weeks ago, that was the largest market overreaction of our lifetimes.
That's right.
Here we are right now. We know where this is going to end up. It's going to end up in a much better situation for the U.S. Yes, Trump is a great negotiator, but all the math, all the cards are on our side.
Yeah, for sure. But, look, this is a 27-nation bloc. They are bigger than the trade relationship with Mexico, bigger than Canada. So it's very important. If we actually see a deal, this market is going to be much higher than up 500. And this morning we're looking at the leadership being technology, Mike. Look at tech stocks across the board. Now, Tesla is the one exception because the European sales plunged 49% year over year. Elon Musk facing brand damage, protests over his work with the Trump administration. And then you've got increasing regional competition. Most tech stocks are down year to date. Microsoft and Meta, the only exceptions. But this morning we've got a rally underway. Apple took a hit last week, of course, when President Trump warned that the iPhone maker could face a 25% tariff if it does not reshore production back to the United States. But we're also waiting on NVIDIA's first quarter earnings, Mike. That happens on Wednesday. So I'm going to get your take on that. We've also got retailers that we're watching. Don't forget, you got Costco, Macy's, Kohl's, and Gap out with earnings this week. But we're at the tail end of this quarterly number for the quarter. 96% of the S&P 500 have already reported quarterly results. That's more than 60% beating revenue expectations. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, so to me, these NVIDIA numbers are almost as important, if not more important, than the trade news that we're getting across the tape. And like, why is that? And so it's NVIDIA, you rewind the clock 2 years ago, we're beating by the largest amounts ever in the history of the United States markets. And those beats have become smaller and revenue growth has decelerated. Okay, that has nothing to do with demand. That has nothing to do with AI. For every GPU that NVIDIA sells, they have orders for 15. We've never existed in a situation like this. What's going on right now is capacity constraints. And so what I think this market hinges on for breaking out to the next level is what will NVIDIA's guidance look like? Can they increase revenue more than $4 billion a quarter? And the hurdle for that is how fast Taiwan Semi can pump these GPUs out of their factories. It has nothing to do with demand, has nothing to do with the AI story.
Yeah.
We're in the midst of the biggest technology trend, the fastest growing technology trend in history. So I will be laser glued to that. I think we're going to get good numbers for them. I think we're going to get good guidance, but will it be enough?
By the way, you've talked so much, Mike, about the $7 trillion that you note are in money market accounts. That gives investors wiggle room. That just means money's going to move. Right, Jacob? You've got $7 trillion in money markets accounts. Eventually, that money likely finds its way to the stock market.
It's so easy to say, and we've said for several years in different moments that there's cash on the sidelines. But guess what? There is. And one of the things I love,
all the money and resources being put for illegal migrants in the city. And what do American citizens get? Not as well off as the illegals.
Maria,
in some cases.
The Democrats frame this as humanitarian, but in reality, if the illegals were not included in the census or we deported every single one of them, Republicans would pick up 25 seats in the House. That's why they're giving them money. That's why they're bribing them. They want amnesty. They want these people to stay, and they want to hold on to power.
Yep. Cheryl, lots there, which likely oftentimes comes from the non-Ivy Leaguers who I want on my team. Jack Welch was a great mentor, and that's what he always used to say. By the way, the White House already canceled more than $2.5 billion in federal grants and funding to Harvard over their failure to curb anti-Semitism on campus. And one thing we're going to cover tomorrow is how much of these federal funding cuts are hitting medical research. We're going to talk with a leading lung cancer surgeon to talk about medical research and how China is trying to move ahead and trying to win the race in medical research papers, Mike.
Maria, I love how you bring up China is trying to move ahead. Keep in mind, for Chinese citizens to come to college in the U.S., they are required by Chinese law to spy. Right?
Yeah, right.
So
they've stolen half of it, I know.
So why on earth is there a single one of them in the United States, let alone at Harvard, where they've had professors and faculty be arrested for espionage? Look, this entire higher ed academia world with the federal funding is completely upside down. And as a country that's 36 approaching $37 trillion of debt, maybe it's not time to just pull money from Harvard. Maybe it's time to pull money from a lot of these places as a way to get this big, beautiful bill across the finish line, because this is insane. And then also more on Harvard, they systematically break the law in their hiring practices, their admission practices, and the way that they treat students on campus, particularly those that are Jewish. Okay, they should not get a single dime. In fact, they should be paying fines and penalties, and you should take away their 501c3 status.
Yeah, and by the way, President Trump was aware of this in the first term, right? He knew this. That's why he arrested and had the head of the chemistry department at Harvard indicted, because he was sharing information with the CCP and getting paid for it, not telling anyone about it. So there's that. President Trump understands the China issue. We're just getting started this hour. This week, the Maduro regime kidnapped Juan Pablo Guanipa and more than 50 political and social leaders, all connected to Maria Corina Machado.
Yeah, like what do you expect? I mean, this is a communist party. I mean, the communists destroy everything they touch. You saw the same thing with Cyril Ramaphosa in the White House a week ago. The ANC is a communist party. They've destroyed South Africa. They've destroyed Venezuela. Everything they touch, it fails every single time. It's a matter of time before it happens in China.
All right, stay with us. We've got 30 minutes before the opening bell.